in timestamp 2 as well. But if I schedule that operation in timestamp 2, what does it mean? Basically, the successor node has one less time to schedule, right? So his flexibility reduced. So we will take care of both the things, and then we'll try to calculate some force, and that force will be my guiding factor for listless scheduling. Okay, so that's something we're going to discuss. So basically we can have both MLRC and as well as MRLC based algorithm based on the force. So we'll discuss that. Okay, and let us understand that. So we have to understand what is force first, right? So to calculate force, let's try to define certain terminology. So the first terminology is operation interval, which is something known to us. That it's basically the interval where a operation is schedulable, which is nothing but the span between the ASAP time and ALAP time, right? So ASAP is the earliest possible time where it can schedule, and TALAP is the latest possible timestamp where it can get scheduled. So this is a span where it can get scheduled, right? So and this basically will be calculated based on, so the TL, you know, that it will be calculated based on some lambda. So we can understand that so this TL sometime it depends on the, actually it depends on the lambda, that overall latency. Okay, so so suppose this something we already know, the operation interval where the operation uh, uh, is going to be scheduled, right? So now there are two interesting things we are going to calculate here. The first thing is the operation probability. So what this operation probability means, say particular operation is schedulable in say timestamp 1. Say let me try to draw something. So say operation can schedule in here, either here or here. So that means the probability of getting operation schedule here is 0.5, right? And here also 0.5. And so there is another operation which can schedule here, here, or here. So the probability is kind of 0.33, right? 0.33, because it can schedule either timestamp 1, 2, or 3. So now, how we'll calculate this value? So this we know is basically TS minus TL, right? So this is the span. This is, if even this will get from the operation interval where this operation is schedulable. So if we just say this PIL, right? So PIL is something, a operation VI. What is the probability of that particular operation is going to schedule in timestamp L, right? So this is basically for each operation in each timestamp. So I is the operation number and L is the timestamp number. So we can actually calculate that easily for each operation, because I know the span operation interval, and for each such operation it will be just 1 by the span, right, or the interval. So that will be the probability, right? So for example, this operation is scheduled into 1 possible, so 1 by 2 here, 1 by 2 here. This is 1 by 3 here, 1 by 3 here, and 1 by 3 here. Okay, so this is what is called the operation probability. So if you do not understand something, just stop me. Okay, so now for each type of resource, right? So we have already discussed that there are many type of resource like multiplier, ALU, and so on. So for each type of resource in each timestamp, I can sum all the operations that is actually have a probability here. I can sum them, right? And that will give me this operation type distribution. So for each type of operation K in each timestamp, I can actually have the total probability of the operation. Okay, you understand that? So say for example, there are 3 multiplier which can be scheduled in timestamp 1. And they say for operation 1, so 3 multipliers. So multiplier 1, the probability is say 0.5 here in timestamp 1. For the second operation also it is say 0.5 in timestamp 1, and for the third operation it is 0.3 in timestamp 1. So what is the total? 1.3. So this actually gives the operation type distribution. So for each type K of operation in each timestamp, if I sum all the probability of that type of operations in that state, I'll get the operation type distribution. So QIK is something for each type of operation K each timestamp L, what is the total probability of the operation going to schedule here, right? So this something is I can calculate for each timestamp. So I can calculate the operation probability first, and then I'm going to calculate the operation type distribution QKL. Okay, so that's something we can calculate given the TSAP, ALAP and ALAP and ASAP time. I can calculate these two value, and from there I can calculate the PIL and PKL. Okay. So one thing to be noted, this probability is 0.5. So suppose one operation is going to schedule in timestamp 1 or timestamp 2. So the probability is 0.5 and 0.5. But once I'm going to schedule it in timestamp 1, so the probability will become 1 in timestamp 1 because it is hard schedule now, and probability becomes 0 in the timestamp 2, and vice versa. If I schedule it in timestamp 2, then the probability in timestamp 2 become 1, and in probability in timestamp 1 becomes 0. Right? So this is very obvious because this is something when I already finalized the timestamp of schedule. So let's take our favorite example, that DFFQ example, and try to calculate that distribution graph. Okay. So so you know that this if we say again this lambda equal to 4 for me, and I assume that all operations are single cycle, I can extend the whole process for multi-cycle operation also. You can actually calculate in all this terminology. You can actually extend for multi-cycle operation. But let me take the simplest version and try to explain the basic concept first. Okay. So let's I have this lambda equal to 4. So I know the I know what is the that operation. The terminology is called operation interval. So for this interval is basically 0, right? It is the TLAP and TLAP values both are both is basically 0, and this is also 0 because all node in this node is 0 basically, right? Because I know that they are actually going to be scheduled in the same time step given the lambda equal to 4. But for this node it is 1. This is also 1. So for this node it is 2 because it is 3. Um, so it can schedule in 2, 3, or 4, right? So basically 3, right? This is 2. Just a minute. So this is basically the mobility plus 1. Mobility plus 1. So it should not be 0. This should be 1. Okay. So whatever the mobility plus 1. This is the span 1 to 1. Okay. So and then this is 2, and this is 3. This is also 3. This is a 3 because there are 3 timestamps it can schedule 1, 2, and 3. So this is also 2, 3, and 4. So that from there we can find out. So once I know this, so I can calculate. So the probability of operation 1 V1 in timestamp 1, which is basically is 1 because there is no other alternative. It has full probability of operation V1 in timestamp 1 is 1, and rest of the things probability of operation 1. Okay, this is something here wrong. So this will be P12, P13, and P14 all are 0 because probability of having the operation in timestamp 2, 3, and 4 is 0. Okay. Similarly, for operation 2, probability of operation 2 in timestamp 1 is 1, and rest of the time it is 0. So for V6, I'm actually trying to consider this timestamp. Okay, so all the operation which is basically can start in this timestamp, which is of multiplier type, is 1, 2, 6, and 8. So for 6, I know that it can actually schedule in either in timestamp 1 or 2. So the probability of operation 6 in timestamp n is 0.5. Probability of operation 6 in timestamp 2 also 0.5. And then probability of 6 in 3 and probability of operation 6 in 4 is 0 because they cannot schedule there. Okay. And for V8, it is basically either can schedule 1, 2, or 3. So probability of P81, P82, and P83 is 0.3. I mean 3 or 0.3. And this is P84 is basically 0. So this is how I calculate for timestamp 1. So these are the operation V1, V2, V6, and V8 of type multiplier can only schedule here. So I just calculate their probability, and I found that in timestamp 1 it is 1 plus 1 because this is 1, this is 1, this is 0.5, this is 3. So total is 2.83. Right? So this is 2.83. Sorry, 2.83. Yeah, sorry.
So, like, what is V1, V6, V8 represents exactly?
The node. So one, the V1 is this is node one, right? So I just write here one, but this is basically V1, V2, V6. This is the node, right? Node one, node two. So this is the node in this particular DAG, right? So this one is V1, this is two is V2, six is V6. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So
Excuse
if
me,
you,
sir.
yes, please.
Sir, for V7, like when we consider the seventh operation, we cannot
Hmm.
just simply say it will be 0.5, 0.5. Like if V6 is scheduled in first, then it would be 0.5, 0.5. But if V6 is scheduled in second, then it will surely be the third with
Yes,
probability
yes,
1.
it's a very good point. We'll take care of that. So I'm just trying to introduce the concept, right? So then exact force I have not talked about yet, right? I'm just saying the probability of execution. The force calculation will come in the next slide. Okay. But you're right that if six come in schedule in timestamp 2, 7 probability will change, right? And that has to be taken care during calculation of the force. Okay. So we'll talk about that. The first thing what we try to understand that for each type of operation, like this is for multiplier, this is for multiplier, and this is for ALU. For each timestamp, we try to calculate the probability distribution, right? So the terminology called operation type distribution. So what is the total number of operation can at max get scheduled here is 2.8 in multiplier is 2.8 here. Similarly, you can see it will be 2.3 in timestamp 2. It is some 0.8 or something in timestamp 3 and 0 in timestamp 4. So this will give you the idea what is the maximum possible number of multiplier can get scheduled. I mean, in probability, basically, what is the probability of maximum multiplier can get scheduled here? And similarly, for the ALU type, this 10, 11, those things I can calculate. If you see 10, it has probability is 1 by 3 in timestamp 1. So that's why it is 0.3. No other ALU operation is possible in timestamp 1. So this is 0.3 in timestamp 2. In timestamp 2, in timestamp 2, 0.3 will come from this guy, 0.3 will come from here, and then and then this will come 0.3. So this the totals will be 1, right? So this all three operation has 1/3 chance in going to schedule in timestamp 2. So it is 1 by 3 into 3, it is 1, right? So this way I can calculate the distribution graph for each type of operation in each timestamp, which is QIL, right? So QIL one, so QKL, right? So for each type of operation K, what is the L? So everybody understand this, right? Is there any doubt here?
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, please.
So we are just finding like mobility, like assigning the probability to be 1 by mobility plus 1, and just adding for each timestamp we are adding and showing the distribution. That's it, right? Like we are not considering any conditional probability, right?
Nothing. Yeah, you are right. So I am just doing blindly now. Just
Okay,
I am identifying the probability is basically 1 by mobility plus 1. And then I just sum for each type of resource in each timestamp. And that will give me these numbers. So that's all so far. No force yet. Okay.
okay, sir.
So yeah, good. So now what is force basically? What I told you is that basically I'm going to discuss the same list scheduling algorithm basically, but my priority is now not the distance from the sink, rather the force. Okay. So so let's understand what is force now, and that should actually have some meaning in the context of scheduling, right? You cannot just take some arbitrary thing and you do the scheduling, right? So what is the idea here is so force is basically related to concurrency. So the terminology is the force here is the concurrency. So larger the value of this force, that means the larger concurrency. And if the least value of the force means the least concurrency, that means least resource, right? If you have the more concurrency, that means you need more resource. And if you have the less force, then the total concurrency is less, and concurrency is less means the number of parallel operation is less, so you need less resource, right? So the analogy of this force in context of scheduling is this. And why we are saying it's force? It's basically it has a similarity with the in the mechanical elastic. So if you have elastic, you try to displace its endpoint, right? You stretch it. So what is the total force? Is basically the amount of the displacement you have done with some constant factor, right? So that is what is force. And here also, it's basically it's the same thing as your some of your friend was saying that if you schedule 6 here, then it will impact in 7 and so on. So it's basically so operation type, so constant is the operation type distribution. So this is the maximum concurrency of that level. So if you try to put some operation in the with high value, that means it will increase the high concurrency, and it will increase the concurrency, and hence it will increase the resource also, right? So that is basically the constant is that the operation type distribution, and the displacement is something the change in probability, right? So basically, if you one operation is possible in timestamp 1, 2, or 3, if you schedule in 1, probably it won't impact the rest of the things. But if you try to put it in say 2 or 3, it will impact on the subsequent succession nodes, right? So that something will come in this probability. So it's basically the force terminology came from the mechanical analogy that if you have elastic, if you try to displace the endpoints, the amount of the force will be created based on the displacement value plus the constant. So we are going to use the same analogy here to calculate the force during scheduling of the nodes. Okay. So what is that? So you are right that there are two kind of force here. One is the self force, right? So it's self force is that what is the impact of scheduling a particular operations in a particular time step. Okay, it has some value, right? If you schedule some operation in time step L, whether it is good or bad, right? So it has some implication on the that force value. I mean, for example, if you just schedule all this all operations this 1, 2, 6, 8 in time step 1, obviously it's a in concurrency is more, so it has some impact on the overall resource and parallelism, right? So there are two type of force. The first type of force is a self force. It's basically it'll come from a operations if it's scheduled in a particular time step L. I'll explain that what is that. And the other one is what is basically your friend was trying to say is the predecessor or successor force. We'll usually say it is a successor force. So it's basically if you particular schedule a operation in a particular timestamp, it may impact your successor nodes, right? For example, like if you schedule this operation 6 in timestamp 2, then 7, although it has a mobility 2, now it is forced to schedule only in 7 in timestamp 3, right? It cannot schedule in timestamp 2. So when you actually schedule a particular operation in a particular timestamp, his successor mobility will impacted, may be impacted, may or may not be, right? So that is what is called successor force. And the total force is basically summation of this successor force and the self force. Okay. So let us see how we will calculate this self force and this successor force. Okay. So the self force is something is what is suppose I am going to schedule a operation Vi in timestamp L, right? So what is the force then? So this is that operation distribution, that type distribution, whatever we calculated, this operation type distribution. So that operation is one type of operation. So that I'll get from this QKM of type distribution of this number, and the probability of that particular operation. It's basically say that variation in probability. If I schedule this operation in that particular timestamp, what is the variations on the timestamp, and it is actually summation from this TS to TL of that particular type of operation, right? So this is what is the self force. So if you schedule the operation in one timestamp, the probability, as I mentioned, the probability of that particular timestamp will become 1, and for the rest of the timestamp it will become 0. So whatever the probability I assume earlier, right? So PIM is 1 by the 1 by that mobility plus 1. So that value, so 1 by say 2 or 1 by 3. So that was the based on that I calculate the operation type distribution. Now I fix it to particular timestamp, say L. So the rest of the timestamp it will become 0, right? And in that particular timestamp it will become 1. So here this delta LM is something called this Knocker delta function. It is basically say either 1 or 0. It can take value 1 or 0, and which is something needed here, right? So if I schedule a particular operation in time step say M, so then it will become 1 for that particular step, and for the rest of the time step it will become 0, right? So this is basically either 1 minus this or 0 minus this, right? So the probability of that particular operation of that time step. So this is what we have calculated blindly without considering its actual schedule, right? We just calculate this PIM is something the probability of operation I to be scheduled in timestamp L. That I have already calculated, and for by which I have calculated this Q, Km and everything. Now, if I assume that this is going to schedule into timestamp 1 in some timestamp, so it will actually impact the other timestamp, right? So this is what is the self force. So if I just fix this particular value m to a particular number, so then it will become 1 minus this, and for the rest it will become minus pm. Right? For the so because it has a negative impact on those, so it is not going to schedule there. So the concurrency won't increase for those timestamp, but concurrency is going to increase in this particular timestamp. Okay. And
so
it is, earlier it is something say 1 by 3, now it become 1. So it has a more positive impact. Yeah, please.
So can you explain the knocker delta part again, sir? Like when is it taking 0?
Yeah, this is basically a delta m is a it's called the knocker delta function, which is actually a function which can take two value, a possible value 1 or 0. Okay. So based on the criteria. Okay. So effectively, what does it mean? This self force means, so the operation I has a probability to schedule between TS to TL in this time frame, right? And in every timestamp of this type of operation of I have this QM, right? And now if I schedule in a particular timestamp, say M, then for that timestamp the probability will become 1. So I have actually increased the value. Earlier it was PIM, now it has become 1. So it is actually increase in the probability. And for rest of the timestamp, it is a decrease in probability. Okay, because this will become 0 in those timestamp. Because earlier I have considered for all timestamp between this TS to TL, the value is PIM. That is 1 by 3 or 1 by 3, something like this, right? 1 by 2 or 1 by 3 that I just explained. But if I schedule in timestamp 1, so it will become 1 in the timestamp 1. So it will, earlier I have considered 1 by 3, now I am considering 1. So it is increase in the probability. So 1 minus that value. And for rest of the timestamp, I have already considered and I calculate this QKM based on this value 1 by 3, but now it is become 0 because there is no chance that operation is going to schedule in the timestamp. So it will be 0 minus 1 by 3. So it will reduce that value. Right? This is how I am going to calculate the self force. And you can rewrite this equation in terms of this, which is something you can check later. So that's not so important. But this is how I'm going to calculate the self force. Okay. I'll explain with the example. Don't worry. And what is the successor force? It's basically if I fix an operation in a particular timestamp, as I mentioned earlier, it may restrict the time frame for the successor node. Right. So that means if I delay a particular operation, if I just put a operation in the ALAP time or delay the first operation, so the time frame for the successor node will reduce, right? So then that calculation will change, right? So initially say there is a node which is say suppose sorry, yeah, so there is a node like this. So if I schedule this operation late, so then this node initial say the time frame was TS to TL for this node. Okay, so this node is say I. So this node is say I, and this node is say J, right? So now if I schedule this node little bit late, right? So I delay the schedule of this node, the time frame will change. This TS will be reduced, right? Because this something has impact. So let's say that is the modified time frame TS bar and to TL bar. Okay. So you can consider in other way also. Say suppose if I try to schedule this operation early, so it might time impact this operation, right? So that is why this TL. So it's basically either you consider from predecessor to successor or successor to predecessor. So in generic case, either one of them will get impacted, right? Or if you try to squeeze the successor node of that node also and also the predecessor, then both can get impacted, right? So this is the actual TSAP the span, but because of the schedule of other node, this become the new time zone or the time frame where this operation can get scheduled. Then I can calculate this successor force or the predecessor successor force is basically whatever the actual value, what is the self force for the revised time frame minus what is the actual the self force of the actual time zone, right? So this is basically, this equation is coming from this basically. Okay, so basically it is nothing but the self force is what is the self force in the revised time frame minus what is the current time frame. Okay, So let us try to understand. This is something understandable, right? So because I reduce the time frame for the successor node. Okay. So let's try to understand this. So let's take the example here, the V6, right? So V6, we know that it can schedule in timestamp 1 or timestamp 2. So let's say I have planned to schedule this operation in timestamp 1. So then what will be the cell force? If you see here, V6 can be scheduled in first two timestamp as I mentioned. So P1 and P2 will be 0.5 and rest is P6, right? So this is something for the probability. And then distribution is, I already know that in timestamp 1 probability of multiplier is 2.8 and timestamp 2 it is basically 2.3. So it is basically here the 1 is there and here you can see it is a 6. So which I just forgot to copy, right? So this is the data we already calculated earlier. So now if I assign this V6 to timestamp 1, so what is the variation in probability in the step 1? It is basically we assume 0.5, but it become 1, so it is 1 minus 0.5. So this is 0.5 increase, right? And in variation in probability timestamp 2 is I assume 0.5, but it becomes 0, so 0 minus 0.5. It is basically minus 0.5, and this come from this equation, right? So this come from this equation. Okay, so basically what I'm trying to mean is that so I can identify the variation in probability if I plan to schedule this operation 6 in timestamp 1. Okay, so then what is the cell force? It is basically in timestamp 1, this is the distribution 2.8 into the variation in probability, which is 0.5 minus 2.3 into minus 0.5. That's why this is it was plus minus this plus initially, that but this minus comes here. So this is this. So this is the force, right? So if I schedule this operation 6 in timestamp 1, the cell force is some 0.25. Okay, and there is no successor force because it does not impact the schedule of 7, right? So this 7 was either 2 or 3. So since I have scheduled this here, it does not impact on this schedule of the successor nodes. So it has no impact, right? So I calculate. So this is the cell force for the total force, you can say, if I try to schedule the operation 6. Okay, because the successor force is 0. Now assume that I want to assign the operation V6 in timestamp 2. Okay, so then what is the variation in probability? Because it is now scheduled in timestamp 1, so here the probability is increasing, right? So this 1 minus, earlier it was 0.5, now it has become 1 minus 0.5. This is the increase in probability, right? And here it is minus 0.5, decrease in the probability because it is not scheduled here. Okay, and then I can calculate again the cell force. So it is basically minus 2.8 into 0.5. This basically I am multiplying minus 2.5 into minus 0.5. So I multiply 2.8 with minus 0.5. So this is that in timestamp 1, and this is the cell force in timestamp 2. So it is coming minus 2.5. Earlier it was plus 2.5. Now it is coming minus 2.5. Okay, and now you know that it has an impact on the successor, because 7 earlier can schedule in 2 and 3, but now it can only schedule in timestamp 3. So it will impact the successor node schedule. So let's identify the successor force. So successor force is something. So it is basically 2.3 into this is the variation because it cannot schedule in timestamp 2, and 0.8 is the probability distribution of multiplier in timestamp 3. And here it was earlier just 0.5, but it is increased in the probability. So it is basically the summation of these two, which is basically minus 0.75. You understand this? This cannot schedule in timestamp 2, so that's why I put 0 here. It will schedule in timestamp 3 only. So this is where I put 1 here, and this is the probability of the multiplier, the probability distribution of multiplier in 2 and 3 timestamp. So what is the total force? It is basically cell force plus successor force is basically minus 0.25 plus minus 0.75, which is basically minus 1. So here earlier, if I schedule the operation 6 in timestamp 1, then the total force is plus 2.5, and if I go to schedule this operation 6 in timestamp 2, total force is minus 1. So what is the interpretation? It means if I schedule the operation 6 in timestamp 1, the concurrency will increase by 0.25, right? And if I schedule the operation in timestamp 2, then concurrency will reduce by kind of minus 1. So what is the number signify something? It's something we cannot concretely say, but interpretation is that, see, the larger value is the more concurrency, less value is the least value is the less concurrency. So if your objective is to reduce the resource, then probably it is good idea to schedule the operation in timestamp 2 instead of timestamp 1. Okay.
So timestamp 1, right? Concurrency means parallel time running, right? So it should be scheduled like
Concurrency
step
is the
1.
number of operations running in parallel.
Okay, so for minimum resource, if they have given minimum resource, I have to schedule the timestamp 2
It is
according to the.
advisable to schedule, so it will be a higher priority to schedule in timestamp 2, provided I meet the timing and all, right, the latency bound and all. But so this is something, say I'm actually calculating this total force for each node, right? So given a lambda or the latency, I can actually calculate them statically, right? I can calculate all the things statically, because this is all probability, you can just sum up and all. Although complexity is a little bit complex, but it is basically possible, right? So what the conclusion I just say, that least force if I schedule in timestamp 2, so assigning V6 in timestamp 1 improves concurrency, assigning V6 to timestamp reduce the concurrency, and hence it need less resource. Okay. So understand, when everybody understand this calculation for this operation V6 in my graph. Yes.
So I have a small doubt here. If there is a consider in successor force, like V7 has three, like mobility as 2, like it has probability of 1/3 in each time step. Consider this, not in this case, I'm saying in general case. Okay.
Yes.
So because of 6, now consider the mobility has been reduced to 1, like that is only 2 timestamps it could take place. So basically if you schedule 6 in timestamp 2, so it will actually reduce the mobility of 7 by 1. Right? That so now at that time, how am I supposed to determine the Kronecker delta function? Because still it has 2 possibilities, right? So basically what will happen, I understand your question. So basically if you just see this equation, so you have to just see so then it will be 0 here and 0.5 here and 0.5 here, right? So earlier it was kind of 1/3. Now it will become 0.5 for the rest of the things. So you basically you can actually put this value in this equation. I'm just showing simply, but if you just put this value in this equation, you can get it, right? So this is just this, you can just put this value summation of all the number from this revised to revised QK by 1 by that. This is the mobility, revised mobility, and this is the actual mobility. And this is this. So if you just put the number in this equation, you'll get the value. I just show because it is only fixed 1 0 I put, but you can actually put the number here. So in this case, this will become 2 to 3, right? As you mentioned, and in initial case is 1 to 3. Say something. So there are 3 steps, right? Or say 2 to 5, 2 to 4 here, and say this is 2 to 5, something like this. Understand my point, right? Yes, sir. So that successor force you can calculate using this equation, which is basically nothing but the change in the force. Okay, understood? Okay, sir. Okay, so this is something is a completely different way of calculating force, and actually you can understand this effectively. If you have a positive force, means it will increase. If you schedule that operation in there, it will increase the concurrency. And if you have a negative force, that means scheduling there actually will reduce the concurrency, right? And the concurrency is basically number of parallel operations performed in a timestamp. So number of parallel operation performed in a timestamp will determine the number of resource needed. So I can actually, based on my objective function, I can actually decide based on this number. Okay.
So I had one small doubt. If we have 3 nodes like one after another, all of which can move around, if we change like to when we work out the force for the middle node, we will have to consider both predecessor and successor force, or will we only be considering successor force?
It's a good question actually. So so ideally the complexity of this calculation is order of n square. Okay, because once you take a node, you try to determine the things, it will impact his successor.
Sir, we will schedule an operation only after its predecessor is scheduled, right?
Yes.
So we will only therefore we should only calculate successor force.
Yeah, I think so. So just calculating top down will work. Just take the node in the level 1, level 2, and so on. But you have to calculate all possible value and all. So basically, for each node, you can have all. You have to consider all successor node. Is basically n into n, right? Order of n square. Yeah, I think that is the correct answer to this. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So now we have calculated a completely different priority value for each node, which is nothing but the force, which is calculated based on the self force plus the successor force. Okay. Once we have that, then this minimization of latency under resource constant is something the same algorithm, right? So this is the same list scheduling algorithm. Only here this selection will be based on the force value, right? Since here my objective is to minimize the latency, so I'll consider the node which has the maximum force, right? So if I find out say 4 operation which is ready to be scheduled, which is basically in the ready list, and I have to select 2 of them, I'm going to select only those 2 which will give the maximum value of the force, because here objective is to minimization of the latency, right? So if you remember this minimization of the latency under resource constraint algorithm is basically I identify for each type of resource, I start the whole process from the timestamp 1, and then I'll go to timestamp 2 and timestamp 3 and so on. And every timestamp, what I do, I identify the operation which is basically free to be scheduled or ready to be scheduled in the timestamp, and I identify the unfinished operation or which is actually continuing this timestamp, and I always schedule this TLK which is unfinished, and I'll select a subset of the ready operation which so that the total resource bound is satisfied. So here this selection will be based on this force value and which actually improve the concurrency. That means I'm going to select the operation which has the maximum force because it's actually satisfying the resource constraint. So it's better to schedule operation to improve the concurrency. Okay, so this algorithm remain the same, only the force calculations and the selection of the subset from this ready list will differ. Is it clear, everyone? Yeah.
Could you repeat it once again? Could you repeat it
Yeah.
once again?
Yeah. So just to this revise or basically recall the list scheduling algorithm for MLRC, what we do, this is the algorithm. I just copy paste the same algorithm. What I do, we just start from timestamp 1, then I'll go to timestamp 2 and timestamp 3 and so on. So in every time step, what we do for each type of operation, right, operation or resource, what we do, we identify the operations of operations which is ready to be scheduled in the timestamp. Ready means these predecessors are already completed their execution. So this operation can be scheduled in timestamp L, okay, of type K. And then what we identify the operations that are actually continuing in this timestamp, because I am assuming these operations are multi-cycle, okay. And then what we do, we schedule this TLK because they need resource of that particular timestamp. And I identify the subset of this ready list, which is basically SK subset of ULK, such that the total resource requirement is less than or equal to AK, right? I can only select the operation provided I am not overshooting my resource bound. AK is the resource bound that we have already discussed in the last class, right? So this selection in the list scheduling algorithm that I have discussed in the last class, last class, is based on the distance from the same node. That was the priority function. Now I have the priority is the force. So for each node in this ULK, I know the force and which one I should select, which should increase the concurrency, because here my objective is to, if we increase the concurrency or more operations run in parallel, there is a high chance that, I mean, the chance is that you need less time because you are actually running more operations in parallel. So I am going to select this SK or a subset of the ready list such that the total summation of this operations will be less than, I mean, with maximum. So the force is maximum. So here the selection will be based on the higher value of force, right? Not the least value, because least values give the less resource. But here resource is already given bound to me. So I sooner bother about the resource as long as the total summation is less than AK. I am okay. I mean, my algorithm is fine. So I have to select this subset based on this force value, which is the higher force. Okay, and this will continue for all timestamp until I reach. I mean, I have scheduled all the operations.
So here SK is the force component.
Now SK is the subset of operations. So there are, say, in ULK there are 4 operations, say, and say the AK is say 4, right? And this TK is 2. So that means what? I can select 2 out of this 4. I have to select 2 operation out of this 4 available operation, or the operation ready to be scheduled in this timestamp. So which to be selected, right? This is what is the priority determines. So earlier we used to select those 2 which has the distance from the sync node is high. So I am going to select those 2 which has the maximum distance from the sync node. Now I am going to select 2 node again, because I cannot select more than 2 because my resource bound is 4. I can select only 2, and which 2 I have to select out of this 4, which has the maximum force, because since it has the maximum force, that means it will actually increase the concurrency or the number of operation executed in parallel. So which is something is our and which obviously impacting the number of timestamp needed. So it will minimize the latency. Okay, is it clear?
Yes, okay.
Okay, but it is very interesting to understand the other version of the algorithm, right? So MRLC. So suppose I have given the latency bound, some lambda, and I want to minimize the resource constraint. And we have a lot of discussion in the last class. If you remember that I propose an algorithm where I start, because resource bound is not given, so this AK is unknown. So this selection cannot go on here, right? This selection is basically useless unless I know this value AK, but AK is not known to me. So what algorithm that I presented in the class is something I start with a minimum value. The minimum resource for each type is 1 1, and whenever I found there are some critical operation which delaying that operation will increase the latency bound, so then I am going to increase that resource count. Okay, so that is what we have discussed in the last class. If you remember, let me just go back to that slide. So just a second. So this is what we discussed in the last class, that once you find some operation which becomes 0 slack, that means they become critical to be scheduled in timestamp n, then I increase the resource bound to accommodate those operations in timestamp L, right? And then I'm going to schedule all those operations in the timestamp L. But there are some limitations here. We have timestamp 4. So now I initially said there is 1 ALU, now it become 2 ALUs. But once the timestamp 1, 2, and 3, there I cannot utilize those resources, because that time when I'm doing the scheduling, I have considered that there is only 1 ALU available. But at the end, we found that we need 2 ALUs. So that particular ALU could have been utilized in the earlier stage also to do have a better scheduling, right? So, and then your friends actually proposed a couple of ideas. One is basically based on the binary search. Another one is basically, I propose that we just run this 2 times. And then someone has actually proposed that you calculate the kind of the upper limit by some way, and then you start with that and so on, right? So many things we have discussed here. But the problem here was that we do not know the resource bound at the start, so we just extend or enhance the number of resource count when we need that. Right? So that's something we have done. So now for FDS, we have the calculation force at the start itself, right? Because I can calculate all this number for each node at the start, and also I know the lambda, so the number of timestamp is needed, and that is actually feasible because it is a ALAP time, and if I calculate this value and then I can check whether that is feasible or not. So we know the force value for all nodes at the start of my algorithm. Also, I know my lambda, the number of timestamp to be scheduled. So can I come up with a better version of this MRLC algorithm, right? So that is something. So idea is that do I need to go by timestamp 1, then 2 or so, or I can do this in parallel or independent of the timestamp, right? So the main problem was coming in the previous algorithm is that I schedule the operation in timestamp 2 1 first, then 2, then 3, and then 4, something like this. here, but I know the operation where it can get scheduled, right? So I know the operation range or the time frame where it can get scheduled, and where if you schedule in some time, what is the impact? Everything I know, right? So can I have a better algorithm which is basically independent of the ordering of the timestamp? The main problem was coming in the previous explanation. It is because of the ordering of the operations. Okay, so here is the algorithm. So here I am not going in timestamp wise. Okay, so this is basically minimization of the so this is something wrong. It should be MRLC. Okay, so let me just write it. This is minimization of resource under latency constraint. So so this is very interesting. So here I know the lambda. What I am going to do, I am going to calculate this the time frame. I can actually identify the time frame, and then what I can do, I can compute the operations and type probability, so that we can calculate the operations and their probabilities, and I can calculate the cell force, everything, total force for each node. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to schedule the operation into the timestamp, schedule the operation with least force. Okay, so that means because the least force ensures the least resource, right? So I have set 10 operations. What I'm going to do, I calculate this all the number for all nodes, and then I am going to schedule. I know if I schedule these operations, say operation 4 in timestamp 5, that will give the least force among all 10 operations of their possible time frames, right? And then I'm going to schedule that operation in the timestamp, and then I'm going to contribute this. So here I'm not scheduling the operation based on the timestamp, rather I calculate the force and I'm going to schedule the operation. I'll pick the operation which has the least force among all the remaining operations, and I just see which particular timestamp which is giving the least force, right? I know where it is scheduled. Based on the least force, I just going to schedule this, right? So it might happen that the operations in timestamp 3 gets scheduled first, then something in timestamp 1, because it doesn't matter that way, right? It's just making sure that I'm going to schedule an operation with the least force in each iteration, and I'm going to done with all my operations are done, right? So as I mentioned that once you schedule an operation to a fixed node, you can have to update the time frame and everything, right? So you have to calculate this probability, everything will change because that particular node is fixed. So for rest of the things, his successor and predecessor, things will change, and I have to recalculate everything again, right? So this something is if you can do, then because I'm actually picking up the least force node in every timestamp, it ensures that it will always give the minimum resource, right? So this is how I can do, and it will also ensure that the lambda will be satisfied because I'm actually doing everything, calculating everything in with respect to lambda only, because ALAP is basically the lambda. I mean ALAP time comes from this lambda. Okay, so this then how we'll get the resource after scheduling everything. I'll identify how many operations scheduled in a particular time step, and maximum of that will give you the resource bound, right? So this is how this MRLC will work with force. And so any question about this MRLC?
So can we try a problem like the problem which we were doing yesterday? Can we try that using this thing? Like we'll see how does this work. Like,
yeah, so basically it's a good idea that you take the same example and try to schedule the things. Although I do not bring an example here, but that can be a good homework for you, right? So you just take the same graph, you calculate the initial thing, you identify the node which is the minimum force for each type of resource, right? It's basically you have to do, it doesn't matter which type of resource, you can take any operation and you just do that in that timestamp, because and then finally it will come up with a schedule, right? So that's something we can do here. Okay, but so you can actually work out an example, then it will make your things clear. Okay, so let me just continue. So the good thing about this, it does not take one iteration at a time, right? It's basically rather consider one operation at a time and schedule them. Okay, complexity is something is n cube if you just do it very blindly, because calculating these things will n square, and this is going to happen for n. So n into n square is something n cube, but efficient implementation give you n square, which something you can think of how you can make it n square. That is the lowest bound, but in general, if you go by generic algorithm, it will be n square here, and this outer loop is n, so n into n square is basically n cube, right? Efficient implementation is n square. So so the study shows that this FDS algorithm actually is superior than the normal estimate scheduling because we have more data here, right? But the complexity is high n cube, which is something sometimes make it difficult to use for practical design, okay, for large design. But this is very interesting algorithm, and here the good important point here is that we always take care of the inference or the side effect, because the successor force is something taking care of the side effect of scheduling a particular node in a time step. So that's why it actually gives a better scheduling in terms of minimization criteria. Okay. So I'm done with the class. If you have any question, we can discuss. Otherwise, we'll conclude.
So when we calculate the successor force, we have to calculate it for all nodes after the current node, right? Not just the immediate successor.
Or basically what, yeah, it's a good point that when you just update, you may not have to update everybody, only maybe some. That's why a efficient implementation give you a better complexity. So it's not that you have, because many of the node is not unaffected because of that particular schedule of a single node, right? So you have to just update the node which time frame get disturbed, right? That's all.
Okay, sir.
Okay, any other question?
Sir, I am still not clear about the question which I asked before. That is, if we have three mobilities, like mobility as 2 in the start, and due to scheduling of a predecessor in a particular time step, the mobility gets reduced by 1. How does the Kronecker delta function changes?
Yeah, so this is the equation you see. So I'll calculate considering the modified version 2 cycle, and this is 3 cycle, right? And this is what is your predecessor force. The way I have shown is little bit different. That is not following this equation, but this is the equation will tell you, right? This is the self force corresponding to the actual time frame TS to TL, and this is the modified time frame. And you just calculate, and this is the modified mobility, and this is the modified mobility, initial mobility. So basically, you calculate the self force. For the actual time frame versus the modified time frame or the revised time frame, and that will give you the take the difference, and that is will give you the successor force. Okay.
Okay, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? I think we are done with this class.